Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Before we begin, please like and subscribe to my channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I never believed my apartment in Portland had thin walls until that November night. My roommate Clarissa had left for Thanksgiving weekend, flying back to Denver to see her family. I'd stayed behind, broke from student loans, and honestly relieved to have the place to myself for once. Our apartment was on the third floor of a converted Victorian on Morrison Street, the kind with crown molding and radiators that clanked all night. It had character, the landlord said. What he meant was it had problems. Thursday evening, I made myself a turkey sandwich and settled in to binge some shows. Around 10 p.m., I heard it for the first time, a long, slow exhale coming from somewhere in the walls. I muted the TV. Silence. I convinced myself it was the heating system. Old buildings make weird noises, right? It happened again at midnight. This time I was brushing my teeth, and the sound came from directly behind the bathroom mirror. A deep, measured breath, like someone had been holding it in and finally let go. My hand froze, toothbrush dripping foam into the sink. I pressed my ear against the wall. Nothing. I didn't sleep well that night. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump. I kept my bedside lamp on and scrolled through my phone until my eyes burned. But I must have dozed off around 3 a.m. because I woke up at 4:17 to the sound of breathing directly above my bed. Not in the walls this time. In the ceiling. Long, rattling breaths, slow and deliberate. In, out, like whoever, or whatever, was up there wanted me to hear them. I lay completely still, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. The breathing continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only 5 minutes. Then it stopped. I spent Friday in coffee shops. I couldn't be in that apartment alone. When I finally returned after dark, I brought a friend, Malik, from my statistics class. I felt stupid explaining it to him, but he agreed to check things out. We examined every inch of the place. No attic access. No crawl space. The apartment above mine was occupied by an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen who walked with a cane. We even knocked on her door. She was perfectly pleasant, watching Wheel of Fortune, and had no idea what I was talking about. Malik left around 10 p.m. I locked the door behind him, checked all the windows, and tried to convince myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Stress, isolation, too much true crime podcasting before bed. At 11:43 p.m., I heard footsteps. Not in the hallway, inside the walls. Slow, methodical steps moving from the living room toward my bedroom. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, when I noticed something that made my blood turn to ice. The footsteps were keeping pace with me. I stood up from my bed. The footsteps stopped. I took 2 steps toward the door. The footsteps matched me, moving parallel through the wall. I broke into a run toward the front door, and the walls erupted with the sound of something, sprinting alongside me, the footfalls thundering through the plaster and beams. I made it to the door, fumbled with the locks, and burst into the hallway. The building was silent. I ran down to the first floor and pounded on the superintendent's door until he answered, annoyed and half asleep. He followed me back up, flashlight in hand, and we searched the apartment together. He even pulled the panel off one of the walls in my bedroom. The space between the walls was barely 6 inches wide, insulation and old wiring. No room for a person to stand, let alone walk. "You sure you're okay?" he asked me, his expression somewhere between concern and suspicion. "Maybe you should call someone. Family or something." I spent that night on his couch. Saturday morning, I went back up to pack a bag. I was leaving. Screw the lease, screw the security deposit. But when I opened the door to my apartment, I smelled something that hadn't been there before. Cigarette smoke. Stale and strong, like someone had been chain smoking in there for hours. Neither Clarissa nor I smoked. I'd never smelled it in the building before. And then I saw them, wet footprints, leading from my bedroom closet across the hardwood floor to the front door, human-sized, barefoot. They were already starting to dry, the edges pulling away from the wood. I followed them backward to the closet. My clothes had been pushed aside. The back wall, the wall that faced the exterior of the building, had a small panel I'd never noticed before, partially hidden behind a storage box. It was ajar. My hands were shaking as I pulled it fully open. Behind it was a narrow space, maybe 3 feet wide, that ran the length of the apartment between the original wall and a newer one. Someone had renovated years ago and sealed off this gap. In the dim light from my phone, I could see a sleeping bag, empty food wrappers, a camping lantern, cigarette butts, and a notebook. I didn't open the notebook. I didn't touch anything. I backed out of that closet, out of that apartment, and I called the police. They found evidence that someone had been living in that space for at least 2 weeks. The panel in my closet had been modified to open from inside. There were similar panels in other parts of the wall, including one in the ceiling above my bed. The police estimated the person had been coming and going through the fire escape while I was at class. They never found who it was. The notebook was filled with drawings of me sleeping. Pages and pages of sketches dated over 14 days. The last entry was from Friday night. She knows. I moved out that week. Clarissa found a new roommate for the lease. I never went back, not even for my furniture. Sometimes I still wake up at night thinking I hear breathing in the walls. But I live in a new construction now. Steel frame, concrete, no gaps. But here's the thing that still keeps me up at night. The last page in that notebook wasn't a drawing. It was an address, my new address, written in red ink with yesterday's date underneath it. I haven't heard anything yet, but it's only been 3 weeks. I house sat for the Kowalskis exactly once, and I'll never do it again for anyone. They lived in Deerfield, Illinois, in one of those sprawling subdivisions where every house looks identical, white siding, black shutters, 2-car garage. Mr. Kowalski taught physics at the high school where my mom worked, and when they needed someone to watch their place over spring break, she volunteered me. Easy money, they said. Just water the plants, bring in the mail, make the house look lived in. They left on a Saturday morning. I arrived that evening with my overnight bag, let myself in with the key they'd left under the ceramic frog by the garage, and settled in. The house was nice, open floor plan, granite countertops, family photos everywhere. Their daughter Veronica was in most of them, gap-toothed and grinning. She was at volleyball camp, they'd told me. Everything was fine that first night. I ordered pizza, watched Netflix on their massive TV, and went to sleep in their guest room around midnight. The neighborhood was quiet except for the occasional car passing by. Sunday is when things got strange. I woke up around 9 a.m. and went to the kitchen to make coffee. That's when I noticed the photographs. They were different. Not dramatically, just slightly off. In the photo on the mantle, Veronica was wearing a blue shirt instead of the red one I remembered. The family photo in the hallway showed them at the beach, but I could have sworn it had been a mountain scene the night before. I figured I was misremembering. I'd only glanced at them briefly, but it bothered me enough that I really looked at the photos as I walked around the house. Mr. Kowalski looked different too. Thinner in the face, different glasses. Mrs. Kowalski's hair was shorter. Then I found the calendar in the kitchen. The Kowalskis I knew didn't have a calendar hanging up, but there it was, magnetic on the fridge, with neat handwriting marking various appointments. The handwriting looked like Mrs. Kowalski's, but the appointments were all wrong. The orthodontist on a Tuesday. Veronica didn't have braces. I tried to call my mom, but my phone had no signal. That was weird. I'd had full bars the night before. The house phone was dead too. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I just confused some details. That cell service was spotty sometimes, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I went to the front door to check the mail, and that's when I saw the number, 4782. The Kowalskis lived at 4728. I was absolutely certain. I'd put the address in my GPS. I'd been here before, dropping off a textbook for Mr. Kowalski. My stomach dropped. I opened the door and looked at the number mounted beside it, 4782, not 4728. I was in the wrong house. The panic hit me like ice water. I'd used a key under a ceramic frog, and it had worked, and I'd spent the entire night in someone else's home. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door, ready to bolt, when I heard a toilet flush upstairs. Someone was in the house with me. I froze in the entryway, my hand on the doorknob. Footsteps creaked across the floor above me. Slow, heavy footsteps. I hadn't heard anyone come in. I'd been alone all night. I was sure of it. Hello? I called out, my voice cracking. The footsteps stopped. Silence stretched out for what felt like an eternity. Then a voice, female, called down the stairs. Is someone there? It sounded like Mrs. Kowalski, but different. The pitch was wrong, like someone doing an impression. I'm sorry, I said, backing toward the door. I think I'm in the wrong house. I'm leaving right now. Wait, the voice said. Don't go. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. The footsteps started again, coming toward the stairs. I yanked the door open and ran. I didn't look back, just sprinted down the driveway and into the street. I ran until I found a house with a car in the driveway and people visible through the windows, and I pounded on their door. The couple who answered looked alarmed. I was crying, hyperventilating, trying to explain. They let me use their phone to call my mom. While I waited for her, the man walked with me back toward the house I'd run from, insisting we figure out what happened. We found 4782. It was identical to the Kowalski's house, but when we looked in the windows, we could see it was empty, completely empty. No furniture, no photos, no nothing, just bare walls and dusty floors. "Are you sure this is the house you were in?" The man asked me. I was sure. I could see my pizza box on the counter through the kitchen window. But when he tried the door, it was locked. The ceramic frog was there, but there was no key underneath. My mom arrived and took me to the actual Kowalski house, 4728, 3 doors down. She had a spare key. Inside, everything was exactly as it should have been. The photos were the originals I remembered. Red shirt, mountain scene. No calendar on the fridge. My overnight bag was sitting on the guest bed, unpacked like I'd never left with it. My mom thought I'd had some kind of episode. Stress from midterms, maybe sleepwalking. The police were sympathetic but confused. The house at 4782 belonged to a couple who'd moved to Arizona 6 months ago. It had been vacant ever since, and the realtor confirmed no one had been inside. The lockbox hadn't been opened. But I know what I saw. I know where I slept. And I know that when I checked my phone later, after it mysteriously had service again, I had a text from an unknown number, sent at 3:47 a.m. while I was sleeping. It was a photo of me, asleep in the guest bed at 4782, taken from the doorway. The message below it said, "Welcome home, Jolene. That's my name, but I never told anyone in that house my name." My uncle's house in Akron, Ohio, was supposed to be a temporary solution. I'd graduated college in May and still hadn't found a real job, just part-time retail that barely covered gas money. My Uncle Fletcher lived alone in a 3-bedroom Craftsman near Goodyear Heights, and when he heard I was struggling, he offered me his spare room, rent-free, until I got on my feet. He traveled constantly for work as a medical equipment salesman, so the house was empty most of the time anyway. "Just don't go in the basement," he told me when he showed me around. "Foundation issues. Stairs are rotted. Dangerous." The basement door was in the kitchen, secured with a sliding bolt lock. It seemed excessive for a structural problem. But Uncle Fletcher had always been paranoid about liability. I agreed to his terms and moved in that weekend. The first 2 weeks were uneventful. Uncle Fletcher left on a sales trip to Michigan, and I had the place to myself. I worked my shifts, sent out resumes, and spent my evenings applying for jobs. The house was comfortable, if old-fashioned. Wallpaper from the 70s, carpet that should have been replaced decades ago, but it was clean and quiet. Then I started noticing the smell. It began subtly, a musty, organic odor that seemed to drift through the vents. I thought maybe something had died in the walls, a mouse or squirrel. I bought air fresheners, but the smell persisted, growing stronger each day. By the 3rd week, it was unmistakable, the smell of rot, of something decaying. It was coming from the basement door. I texted Uncle Fletcher, but he didn't respond right away. Cell service was spotty wherever he was. I figured I'd just prop open some windows and deal with it. But one night, around 2 a.m., I was woken up by a sound I couldn't ignore. Scratching. Rhythmic and insistent, like fingernails on wood. It was coming from the basement door. I crept into the kitchen, my phone flashlight cutting through the darkness. The scratching stopped as soon as I entered. I stood there listening, my pulse hammering in my ears. Then I heard something else. Breathing. Deep and ragged, coming from the other side of the door. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded small and stupid. The breathing stopped. For a moment, there was nothing. Then a voice, hoarse and broken, whispered from behind the door. "Let me out." I stumbled backward, knocking into the kitchen table. This couldn't be happening. The basement was empty, unsafe. Uncle Fletcher had said so. "Please," the voice came again. "It's so cold down here." I should have left right then, grabbed my keys and driven anywhere else. But something kept me there. Maybe disbelief. Maybe the terrible certainty that I needed to know what was behind that door. I approached slowly, my hand reaching for the bolt lock. It was warm to the touch, almost hot despite the chill in the kitchen. I slid it back and grasped the doorknob. "Who's down there?" I asked. "Your uncle," the voice said. "Fletcher. I've been trying to get out for days." That didn't make sense. Uncle Fletcher was in Michigan. I'd gotten a text from him just yesterday, but the voice did sound like him. Same gravelly tone, same slight lisp on his S's. I opened the door a crack. The smell that rushed out nearly knocked me over. Decay and chemical sweetness, like spoiled meat mixed with perfume. The darkness below was absolute. No light from windows, no shapes visible. "Uncle Fletcher?" I called into the void. "Come down here," the voice said. "Help me up the stairs. I'm hurt." Every instinct screamed at me to slam the door shut, but I hesitated. What if it really was him? What if he'd fallen, been trapped down there while I ignored his cries for help? I found the light switch just inside the doorframe and flicked it on. A bare bulb illuminated the top of a wooden staircase that descended into shadow. The stairs looked fine, not rotted at all, and at the bottom, barely visible in the dim light, I could see the edge of something pale. A hand. I started down the stairs before I could talk myself out of it. Each step creaked under my weight. The smell grew overwhelming. As I descended, my eyes adjusted, and I could make out more details. The basement was finished, not the disaster zone Uncle Fletcher had described. Concrete floor, drywall, shelving units. And in the center of the floor, sprawled beside an overturned chair, was a figure. It took me 3 more steps before I realized what I was looking at. It was Uncle Fletcher, or had been. His body was in an advanced state of decay, skin mottled and sunken. He'd been dead for weeks, maybe longer. A plastic bag lay near his hand, next to a half-empty bottle of whiskey and scattered pills. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. My brain refused to process what I was seeing. If Uncle Fletcher was dead, who had I been texting? Who had been sending me grocery money through Venmo? Found me, a voice said from the top of the stairs. I spun around. Standing in the doorway, backlit by the kitchen light, was Uncle Fletcher, alive, smiling, but wrong. His movements too stiff, his expression too fixed. "I really hoped you wouldn't," he said, and started down the stairs toward me. I don't remember climbing past him. Don't remember running through the house or getting to my car. The next clear memory I have is being at a police station in Cleveland, incoherent and shaking, trying to explain what I'd seen. The police went to the house. They found Uncle Fletcher's body in the basement, exactly as I'd described. He'd been dead for approximately 3 weeks, since 2 days after I moved in. Apparent suicide, though the investigation was ongoing. But here's what they couldn't explain. My bank statements showed 3 Venmo transfers from Uncle Fletcher's account in the past 2 weeks. His phone records showed texts sent to my number during that same period. Someone had been in that house with me, pretending to be him, maintaining the illusion. They never found who it was. No fingerprints except mine and Uncle Fletcher's. No signs of forced entry. The neighbors never saw anyone else coming or going. I gave them my phone, and they analyzed the texts I'd received from Uncle Fletcher. The linguistic analysis came back strange. The messages were consistent with his writing style, they said. But there were anomalies, phrases that didn't quite fit, word choices that seemed wrong. The last text I'd received, at 1:53 a.m. on the night I found the body, simply said, "See you soon, Corinne." The detective told me Uncle Fletcher had been estranged from his sister, my mother, for 15 years. They'd had a falling out over something my mother refused to discuss. When I asked if there was anyone else who might have had access to the house, the detective gave me a strange look. "Your uncle's will was updated 4 days before he died," she said. "He left everything to someone named Corinne Fletcher. That's not my name. My last name is Brennan. I have no idea who Corinne Fletcher is. But whoever was in that house with me, pretending to be Uncle Fletcher, thinks I'm her. And I still get texts sometimes, from blocked numbers, asking when I'm coming home." I moved into the studio apartment on Magnolia Boulevard in Burbank last February, mostly because it was cheap and I was desperate. The building was one of those 1940s stucco boxes, probably charming once, but now just shabby. My unit was on the 2nd floor, facing the street, with a large window that looked directly into the apartment building across from me, maybe 30 feet away, close enough that I kept my curtains drawn most of the time. That's how I first noticed her. The apartment across from mine had its curtains open, and standing in the window was a mannequin. Not a store dummy. One of those artist's mannequins, the wooden kind with joints, about 3 feet tall. It was positioned on a small table, facing outward, toward my window. I thought it was weird, but harmless. The apartment looked empty otherwise. No furniture I could see, no lights ever on. Maybe an artist lived there and used the natural light. I didn't think much about it, but the mannequin bothered me. Something about its eyeless face pointed directly at my window. I started closing my curtains at night, though that made my already small studio feel like a cave. After about a week, I noticed the mannequin had moved. It was no longer centered in the window, but positioned to the left side, as if looking at a different angle of my apartment. The next day, it had moved again, closer to the glass. I convinced myself someone was just repositioning it, maybe taking progress photos of their artwork or something. But I never saw anyone in that apartment, never saw lights on or movement behind the windows. Just the mannequin, which seemed to drift across that window like it was on a very slow track. 3 weeks in, I got home from my shift at the call center around 11 p.m. As I climbed the stairs to my floor, I glanced across the street. The mannequin was pressed right against the window now, its wooden face touching the glass. I hurried inside and locked my door. This was stupid. It was an inanimate object, but when I peeked through my curtains, there it was, still pressed to the glass like it was trying to see into my apartment more clearly. That night I had trouble sleeping. I kept imagining I heard tapping on my window, even though I was on the second floor. Around 3 a.m. I got up to use the bathroom, and without thinking, I glanced out my window. The mannequin was gone. The empty apartment was dark, the window black and vacant. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the temperature. Where had it gone? More importantly, who had moved it in the middle of the night? I spent the next day trying to focus on work, but I kept checking my phone, looking at the photo I'd taken of the mannequin in the window. I don't know why I'd taken it. Maybe to prove to myself I wasn't imagining things. In the photo, the mannequin's head was tilted slightly, like it was curious. When I got home that evening, I made myself look across the street before going inside. The mannequin was back, but it wasn't in the window anymore. It was on the fire escape. Their fire escape, directly across from mine. Someone had positioned it there, sitting on the metal grating, facing my window. Its jointed arms were positioned oddly, one raised as if waving. My hands were shaking as I let myself into my apartment. I locked the door, bolted it, and closed every curtain. This wasn't art, this was something else. Someone was messing with me. I called the building manager, a perpetually stoned guy named Troy, who managed both our building and the one across the street. He said the apartment in question was vacant, had been for 2 months. No artist, no tenant, no authorized access. "You sure you're seeing what you think you're seeing?" he asked, in that condescending tone that made me want to scream. I hung up and called the non-emergency police line. They said they'd send someone by to check it out, but it would be a few hours. In the meantime, I should stay inside and keep my doors locked. I tried to distract myself with TV, but I couldn't focus. Around 9 p.m. I heard something that made my blood freeze, tapping on glass. Rhythmic and insistent. It was coming from my window. I grabbed a kitchen knife and approached the curtains slowly. The tapping continued, tap, 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 patient and measured. I took a breath and yanked the curtains open. The mannequin was on my fire escape. It was pressed against my window, one wooden hand raised, knuckles touching the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Its expressionless face was inches from mine, separated only by the thin pane. I screamed and stumbled backward. The knife clattered to the floor. This wasn't possible. The fire escape was metal. I would have heard someone climbing it, and the mannequin wasn't even positioned like it had been set there. It was standing upright, balanced on its tiny wooden feet, hand raised. I ran to my door, ready to bolt into the hallway, when I heard the window slide open behind me. I didn't turn around. I yanked my door open and ran straight to Troy's apartment on the first floor, pounding until he answered. When I dragged him back upstairs, my door was still open and my apartment was empty. The window was closed and locked from the inside. No mannequin on the fire escape. Nothing disturbed, but on my floor near the window were small circular marks. Scuff marks, Troy said. Could be anything. But I knew what they were. They were the exact size and pattern of the mannequin's wooden feet. The police came around midnight. They checked the empty apartment across the street. Door was locked. No signs of entry. Completely vacant. No mannequin anywhere. They filed a report and suggested I might want to install a security camera. I moved out 2 days later, broke my lease, and crashed on a friend's couch until I found a new place. I never went back to that apartment, not even for my security deposit. But here's the thing. Last week, I was walking through downtown LA and passed a vintage store. In the window, positioned among the mid-century furniture and old movie posters, was a wooden artist's mannequin. It was the exact same one. I recognized the chip on its left shoulder, the particular angle of its head, and as I stood there, staring at it through the glass, one of its wooden arms slowly, impossibly, raised up. It waved at me. The store owner came to the door and asked if I wanted to come in and look at something. "That mannequin," he said, "just got it last week. Strange thing. Someone left it on our doorstep with a note attached. Didn't say who it was from, just had a name written on it." He showed me the note. Written in careful script on yellowed paper was a single name. Margot. That's my name. I never told anyone at that apartment building my full name. I'd always just gone by Maggie. The mannequin is still watching me through the store window. And I don't know if I should run or go inside and see what happens when I'm finally close enough for it to touch. I was house-sitting for my professor, Dr. Reeves, at his place in Evanston when I got the first voicemail. It was spring break of my senior year at Northwestern, and I'd agreed to watch his townhouse while he was at a conference in Tokyo. Easy job. Feed the cat, water the plants, collect the mail. He'd be gone for 10 days, and I had the whole place to myself, which beat staying in my cramped dorm room. The townhouse was in a quiet neighborhood near the lake, the kind of place where you could hear wind chimes from 3 houses away. Dr. Reeves had told me to make myself at home, use the study if I needed to work on my thesis, help myself to anything in the kitchen. I'd been there for 2 days when my phone rang at 11:47 p.m. I was in the study, working on my laptop, and didn't recognize the number. It went to voicemail. A minute later, I checked the message. It was my voice, not similar. My exact voice, with my slight Midwestern accent and the way I say my R's. The message was brief. "Don't stay in the house tonight. Leave now. Go to a hotel. Don't ask questions. Just trust me." My hands went cold. It had to be a prank. Someone using an AI voice clone or something. But it sounded so much like me. The intonation, the urgency, everything. I played it 3 times, trying to find something off about it. I couldn't. It was me, warning myself to leave. I checked the number that called. It was my own cell phone number. That's impossible, I thought. You can't call yourself. But there it was in my call log. Incoming call from my own number at 11:47 p.m. Duration, 0:42 seconds. I stood in that study for 20 minutes trying to rationalize it. Spoofed number. Technical glitch. Someone messing with me. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I decided to stay. I wasn't going to let some weird prank drive me out of the house. I locked all the doors, checked all the windows, and tried to go back to work. But I couldn't focus. I kept replaying that voicemail, kept hearing my own voice telling me to leave. Around 1 a.m., I gave up on working and went to bed in the guest room. I left the hallway light on, something I hadn't done since I was a kid, and kept my phone on the nightstand, volume up. I woke up at 3:33 a.m. to my phone ringing. Same unknown number, which was my number. I stared at it, my heart pounding, and let it go to voicemail. This time I listened to the message immediately. "You should have left when I told you." My voice, but different this time. Flat, emotionless. "Now you need to hide. Go to the basement, lock the door, don't come out until morning." I sat up in bed, every nerve in my body screaming. The house was silent around me, just the hum of the refrigerator downstairs and the distant sound of wind. Then I heard the front door open. It was subtle, the soft click of the latch, the whisper of hinges. But I heard it. Someone was in the house. I grabbed my phone and crept to the bedroom door. The hallway was still lit, but I could see shadows moving downstairs. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, crossing the hardwood floor of the living room. I should have called 911. That would have been the rational thing, but something stopped me. Maybe the memory of my own voice telling me to hide in the basement. Maybe some instinct I didn't understand. I moved as quietly as I could down the hallway, past Dr. Reeves's master bedroom, toward the back stairs that led to the kitchen. The footsteps below were moving toward the main staircase, the one that led up to where I'd been sleeping. I made it to the kitchen and found the basement door. It was old and solid, with a key lock on the inside. I slipped through and locked it behind me, then descended the wooden stairs into the darkness below. The basement was unfinished. Concrete floor, exposed ceiling joists, storage boxes stacked against the walls. A single high window let in a slice of streetlight. I crouched behind a stack of boxes and tried to control my breathing. Above me, I heard footsteps in the kitchen. They paused at the basement door. The handle rattled, testing the lock. Then silence. I waited there for what felt like hours, my phone clutched in my hand, ready to call for help. The basement was cold, and I could see my breath in the dim light from the window. At 5:17 a.m., my phone rang again. I nearly dropped it. Same number. My own voice on the voicemail. "You can come up now. It's safe, but you need to leave the house immediately. Pack your things and go. Don't try to understand. Just leave." I waited until I could see daylight through the basement window. Then I crept upstairs, unlocked the door, and emerged into the kitchen. The house was silent. Nothing seemed disturbed. No signs of forced entry, no evidence anyone had been there. But on the kitchen table, there was something that hadn't been there before. My laptop. Open. Displaying my thesis document, and someone had been writing in it. The text was in my style, my sentence structure, my vocabulary, my voice, but I hadn't written it. It was a continuation of my thesis, pages and pages of new material, all of it brilliant and polished and complete. At the end of the document was a single line in bold. "You're welcome. Now leave before you become me." I packed my bag in 10 minutes. I didn't feed the cat, didn't water the plants, didn't even lock the door behind me. I just got in my car and drove back to campus. I called Dr. Reeves in Tokyo and told him I had a family emergency. He was understanding. I didn't tell him about the voicemails or the intruder or the writing on my laptop. What would I even say? But the voicemails didn't stop. Over the next week, I got 3 more calls from my own number. Each time my voice left a message. Instructions, warnings, information. I couldn't possibly know. One told me not to take the red line on Wednesday because there would be a delay that would make me late for an important meeting. I ignored it. There was a delay. I missed the meeting. Another told me to check my bank account because there had been a fraudulent charge. There had been. The last one told me to go to a specific coffee shop on State Street at 2:00 p.m. on Friday and sit by the window. I'd meet someone important. I went. I don't know why. Maybe I needed answers. Maybe I was going crazy and wanted to confirm it. At 2:17 p.m., a woman walked in. She was about my age, with my height and build. But her hair was different, her clothes more professional. She ordered coffee and sat down across from me without asking. "You're the one from the townhouse," she said. Not a question. I nodded, unable to speak. I was you.